My name is Elias. At least, I'm fairly certain it is. The name feels right, fits like an old coat, but in these times, you can't trust feelings. Feelings are the first things to go. I'm a historian, or I was, before the world decided history wasn't worth remembering anymore. Now I'm more of a dragon guarding a hoard of treasure nobody wants. The treasure is the Grand Archive, this massive, sealed library in what used to be Boston. It's a mausoleum of human thought, packed floor to ceiling with books, journals, and records. The collected memory of a species that's actively forgetting itself. We're 5 years into the outbreak of what the news initially called Leith's Kiss, a fittingly poetic name for something so brutal. It's an airborne virus, a phantom that slips into your lungs and goes straight for your soul. It doesn't kill you, not in the traditional sense, it just prunes you. It starts with the memories that have the most emotional weight. Your first love, the pride you felt at graduation, the face of your child. It snips them away, one by one, until all that's left is a placid, hollow shell of a person. We call them the forgotten. My own personal ghost, the one that chased me into this dusty sanctuary, isn't the virus itself, but the fear that powers it. I was a professor at the university. During a major public symposium, a televised event, I was challenged on a key date from the Franco-Prussian War. I knew it. I had taught it 100 times. But in that moment, under the hot lights with 1,000 eyes on me, my mind was a perfect, silent blank. The silence stretched. The sweat on my brow felt like ice. The feeling of absolute naked incompetence was the most profound terror I'd ever experienced. My career never recovered from that single public moment of forgetting. So when the world started forgetting, I ran in the opposite direction. I locked myself in here, surrounded by facts, dates, and hard data, things without emotional charge. I figured the virus couldn't touch me here. The archive isn't just a library. It's my fortress against the encroaching void. My desperate attempt to prove that a mind filled with knowledge is a mind that can't be broken. The forgotten are the physical proof of my failure, the walking embodiment of my deepest fear. I see them sometimes from the reinforced windows on the top floor, shuffling through the skeletal remains of the city. They don't shamble like the zombies from old movies. Their movements are fluid, aimless. They'll walk until they meet a wall, then turn and walk the other way. The truly chilling part is their faces. They all have this serene, gentle smile. It's the smile of someone without a single worry, a single pain, a single memory to haunt them. They are the terrifying peace that awaits us all. The virus that made them, tabula rasa, was a government creation, a bioweapon designed to pacify dissent by erasing the memories that fuel it. An elegant, horrific solution. And now, its unchecked programming just keeps running, pruning humanity down to nothing. The real horror isn't their presence, it's the gnawing understanding that their placid emptiness is contagious. That one day, I might look in a mirror and see that same vacant smile staring back. The silence in the archive is usually my comfort, a thick, heavy blanket woven from paper and dust. But for the last week, a new sound has joined it, a cough. Not from a person, but from the building itself. The rhythmic, stuttering wheeze of the main air filtration system. It's the building's heart, and it's failing. Every strained gasp sends a tremor of cold dread through me. For 5 years, these filters have been the only thing keeping Leith's Kiss out. The air outside is thick with it, an invisible poison that I can almost feel pressing against the windows, waiting patiently to seep in. My sanctuary is about to become my tomb. I spent days with the schematics spread out on a massive oak table, my hands covered in grease and my mind racing. The diagnosis was grim. A complete failure of the primary CO2 scrubber unit. It's an archaic, specialized piece of tech, irreplaceable. The thought made my stomach clench. Without it, the air inside will become toxic within a month. I'd either suffocate on my own breath or be forced to open the doors and welcome the fog of forgetfulness. There was only one place to find a part that specific, a name that tasted like rust and fear in my mouth: Omnigen Labs. It was a black site on the other side of the city, the very place that had birthed Tabula Rasa. Going there was a suicide mission. But there was another, more desperate reason pulling me there. Omnigen didn't just create the plague. Rumor has it they were working on a cure. A desperate, insane hope began to bloom in the barren soil of my fear. The mission became twofold: a supply run for a simple machine part, and a crusade for the salvation of the human mind. To save my body and my archive of facts, I had to risk my own soul in the one place where memories went to die. My journey to the lab felt like a descent into someone else's nightmare. I moved through the skeletal city, my footsteps echoing in the unnatural quiet. My focus was narrowed to a single point: the schematics of the lab I'd memorized. Logic, facts, that was the armor for my mind. I told myself that Letha's kiss preyed on emotion, and I was a man of pure intellect. It was a lie, and I knew it, but it was the only prayer I had. The first real scare didn't come from a shambling crowd or a sudden noise. It was quiet, personal, and it cut right through the flimsy armor of my logic. I had ducked inside a derelict city bus to let a small cluster of the forgotten drift by, the hiss of my suit's rebreather sounding deafeningly loud in the confined space. And then I saw him. He was sitting by the window, a man in a worn tweed jacket, not unlike my own. In his lap was a swollen, pulpy brick of moldy paper that was once a book. His fingers, skeletal and pale, were tracing patterns across the mush, his brow furrowed in concentration, as if he were actually reading the ghost of the words. He looked up, not at me, but through me, and the placid smile I had only ever seen from a distance spread across his face. And then it happened. The world shimmered, the edges of the bus dissolving into a strange heat-haze distortion. I saw it, a memory ghost. It wasn't just a flicker. The man was suddenly younger, his face full of life, and he was laughing, a silent, joyous laugh that shook his whole body. A woman with hair the color of fire was leaning her head on his shoulder, her own smile radiant. The book in his lap was crisp and new. I could see the sunlight streaming through the bus window, glinting off a wedding band on his finger. It was so real, so vibrant, I felt like an intruder. Then, just as quickly, the color bled away. The woman dissolved into nothingness. The man's face slackened, the laughter lines vanishing, leaving only the serene, empty mask. The sunlight died, replaced by the oppressive gray gloom. The book rotted in his hands. He was alone again. My own breath caught in my throat, a ragged, painful gasp. The chill that went through me wasn't fear of an attack. It was the absolute, soul-crushing horror of recognition. In his empty gaze, I saw the peaceful, mindless end that was promised to me, and my carefully constructed walls of intellect crumbled into dust. I stumbled out of the bus and pressed on. The ghost of that man's smile burned into my retinas. The experience had shaken me to my core. I kept checking the diagnostic panel on my wrist, looking for an explanation. A glitch in the helmet's visor? A spike in atmospheric toxins causing a mild hallucination? My mind, the logical, academic mind I had cultivated as my ultimate defense, was scrambling for a rational foothold. Denial was a powerful drug, and I took a heavy dose. It was stress. It was the recycled air. It was anything but what it felt like. A glimpse into the mechanics of the plague itself. A vision of a memory being hollowed out. I forced myself to focus on the mission, on the schematics of Omnigen, on the precise torque needed for the scrubber's mounting bolts. Facts, data. The building loomed ahead, a black glass monolith that seemed to absorb the light around it. The lobby was a cathedral of corporate hubris, all sterile white walls and shattered glass. Emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows that seemed to writhe with a life of their own. I moved through the abandoned offices, the silence broken only by the crunch of glass under my boots and the frantic pounding of my own heart. It was a museum of interrupted lives. Desks were still littered with personal effects, a child's drawing of a lopsided sun taped to a monitor, a cold cup of coffee with a perfect lipstick stain on the rim, a pair of overturned high heels next to a desk, as if their owner had simply vanished mid-stride. I found a researcher's terminal that was still drawing power from a backup grid. On it, a final unsent email. It spoke of tabula rasa, of its horrifying efficacy, and it mentioned the cure, Project Mnemosyne, locked away on the central server, protected by a decryption key so complex it was tied to the lead researcher's own biometric and mnemonic data. The email confirmed it. The cure was real. My insane hope hadn't been a fantasy. Finding that email was the point of no return. Before, I could have grabbed the scrubber from the environmental control room and run. Now, I couldn't. Leaving that data here would be a betrayal of every book in my archive, of every life story I had sworn to protect. The weight of that public failure from years ago settled on me again, but this time it was different. It wasn't a source of shame, it was fuel. I would not fail this time. I found the main server room behind a heavy, reinforced steel door. The console next to it glowed a soft green. My gloved finger hovered over the screen. This was it. The moment I committed, there was no turning back. I pressed the access panel. A soft female automated voice echoed through the halls, startlingly clear. Security protocol engaged. Server hub access has initiated facility-wide integrity check. Decontamination cycle will commence in 60 minutes. My blood ran cold. A series of heavy metal shutters slammed down over the windows and doors with a deafening final clang, plunging the corridor into a blood-red twilight. I was trapped. It was what happened next that froze my heart. The sound. A soft, collective sigh from the city outside. A sound I hadn't noticed until the alarm started. The noise, the flashing lights, it was a dinner bell. They were drawn to it. Through the thick, reinforced glass of the corridor shutters, I saw them. First one, then three, then a dozen. The forgotten emerging from the urban decay like moths to a dying flame. They weren't fast, but their sheer numbers were overwhelming. They gathered outside the main entrance, their placid faces tilted up towards the flashing lights, their bodies pressing against the glass. This was no longer an indirect threat. This was a siege. I could see them clearly now in the hellish red glow. An old woman whose hands were clasped peacefully as if in prayer, her eyes wide and serene. A young man in a courier's uniform, his empty bag slung over his shoulder, a faint, pleasant smile on his face. A little girl, no younger than 7, holding the hand of a woman who was probably her mother, both of them staring with the same placid curiosity. Each one was a portrait of forgotten tragedy.
Their eyes, all of them, were fixed on the building, on me. They weren't aggressive, they just watched, waiting. Their collective patience was more terrifying than any snarl.
Inside the server room, the roar of the cooling fans was a physical force, a hurricane of sound that did nothing to drown out the blaring alarms. The world outside the room's panoramic glass wall was a silent, horrifying ballet. The crowd of Forgotten had swelled, their faces and hands pressed against the reinforced panes, their expressions unchanged, their eyes reflecting the frantic red strobes. They were a passive, suffocating wall of humanity. The cure, Project Mnemonicine, was right there, a single encrypted file on the main terminal. But the decryption key? The researcher's email hadn't lied. To get the cure, I had to willingly infect myself with a controlled dose of the virus's core programming. I had to perform a horrifying sacrifice, a targeted mental self-mutilation. I had to let it all go. The system prompted me, its text cold and clinical. Initiate mnemonic defragmentation. Select primary emotional anchor for discard. My wife's name, Sarah, was the first thing to flicker in my mind's eye. I saw her face, laughing in the kitchen, the sunlight catching the flower on her cheek. I felt the warmth of her hand in mine. With a shaking finger, I typed her name. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a wave of vertigo washed over me, so intense I had to grip the console to stay upright. It was like a physical blow. The image of her face didn't fade. It was violently ripped away, leaving a jagged, bleeding hole in my mind. The name Sarah was now just a collection of letters, holding no warmth, no love, no image of her face. A core piece of my soul had been scooped out, leaving a cold, clean space for the data to flow in. With a horrifying clarity, I understood what I had to do. The decryption key was a fortress, and my memories were the walls. I had to tear them down myself. Select next anchor. I closed my eyes and reached for my childhood home. Suddenly, I wasn't in the server room. I was 6 years old, the worn wooden floorboards of our little house cool under my bare feet. I could smell my mother's baking, a specific scent of cinnamon and burnt sugar. I could feel the exact weight of our cat sleeping on my chest. I typed home. The world dissolved into a screech of digital static. The smells, the feelings, the warmth, gone. Replaced by a new line of code, a new piece of the key, slotting into its place. The terror was unlike anything I could have imagined. It was the feeling of being unwritten, of my own history being erased by my own hand. Select next anchor. My wedding day. I saw Sarah. The name was still just letters, but the image was there, for a moment, walking toward me. I felt the warmth of my suit, tasted the cheap champagne, heard the sound of her laughter, a sound that had been my favorite music. I typed vows, sheared away, replaced by cold, elegant algorithms. I could feel my identity, my very being, fraying at the edges. I was becoming a machine of pure logic, my entire life the price for this single transaction. I glanced at the upload bar on the monitor. 98%, 99%. Just as it hit 100%, I caught my reflection in the dark screen. The face staring back was a stranger's, its features twisted in a mask of primal terror. But the horror in his eyes felt distant, a faint echo from a person I used to be. The man in the reflection was screaming, but I couldn't feel it myself. The door to the server room hissed open, the 60-minute cycle complete. My escape was clear. A flicker of the old me,
The historian who valued survival screamed at me to run. I turned, stumbling towards the open door, a desperate animal instinct for self-preservation taking over. I burst into the red-lit corridor, but my legs felt clumsy, disconnected. I couldn't remember the way out. The labyrinthine hallways I had navigated with such precision just an hour ago were now an impossible repeating maze. My short-term memory was gone. I ran into a wall, the impact jarring but strangely painless. I turned and ran into another. The escape I had earned was a prize I no longer had the mental capacity to claim. My flight devolved into a confused, shuffling walk, until I found myself back at the corridor with the glass shutters, facing the patient, silent crowd outside. The desire to escape had been one of the last things to go, and now it was gone too.
I walked out of the Omnigen building, not with the triumph of a savior, but with the profound and unnerving calm of the forgotten. The blaring alarms were just noise, the flashing red lights just colors. The crowd parted for me, their vacant eyes not even registering my presence as I joined them. I felt no fear, no anxiety, only a quiet sense of purpose fulfilled. My mission was complete. The heavy environment suit felt strangely light. I saw the bus where I had hidden earlier and felt nothing. I looked at my own hands, turning them over, and felt no connection to them. They were simply tools that had completed a task. My mind, once a fortress of facts and dates, was now a serene, open field, wiped clean of all the messy, painful, beautiful things that had once grown there. The pathological fear of forgetting, the trauma that had defined my entire existence, was gone. And in its absence, there was not relief, but a terrifying absolute peace. The irony was a concept I could no longer grasp. I had become the thing I feared most, a man without a past, a walking ghost with a placid smile. And I lacked the capacity to even know it. My shuffling feet fell into the same aimless rhythm as the others around me. One more ghost in the silent, smiling machine. Miles away, in a sterile underground bunker, a single green light blinked on a console. A data package had arrived. Dr. Eris Thorne, a man whose weary eyes had seen the end of the world, watched the download complete. There were two files, cure_tabula_rasa.pk and archivist_log evans.dat. He opened the log first, a morbid curiosity he couldn't suppress. It began with the clear academic writing of a historian, detailing a failing air system and a desperate plan. As he scrolled, the language grew more personal, the fear palpable between the lines of technical jargon. Then, near the end, the carefully constructed sentences began to fracture. The calm academic font devolved into a messy, capitalized scrawl, words repeated over and over. The last entry was a chilling testament to a mind coming apart, a frantic, looping script that ended mid-sentence. I must remember my name. I must remember the archive. The fear is the anchor, but I have to let it go. To save them, I have to forget her. I have to remember Sarah. I must remember my name. My name is... Eris felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. He opened the other file. The cure was real. It was a complete reversal agent, a way to restore the pruned connections in the human mind. Humanity had a future. But as the program initialized, its code a beautiful, complex cascade of light on the screen, Eris could only stare at the last unfinished sentence from the man who had paid for it. A man whose name was now just another piece of forgotten history.
Did that story make your skin crawl? That's just a taste of what's lurking. Show your support by liking and subscribing. We're all in this together to survive the next spine-chilling story.